dreams collide. High road roaring every night. Spotlight on Spurs, feel the fight. Spotlight on Spurs, hearts ablaze through the cheers and cloudy days. From the lane to glory's flight. Spotlight on Spurs, shine so bright. Echoes rise when we take the field. This is passion, nothing concealed. Through the tackles, joy ignites. Spotlight on Spurs, burning lights. Feel the tempo, sweet and wild. London's warriors never mild. Every challenge we endure. Spotlight on Spurs, loud and pure.
What's up, guys? Luke here from Spotlight on Spurs. Another week of Tottenham Hotspur. There's plenty to talk about, like there always is. A new manager, some comments, some old managers and their comments, and obviously the very small, very tiny issue of a North London derby coming up. We will be discussing it all. And joining me, as always, my man, Christopher Hubble. How are we doing, sir?
All good, mate. All good. It's been nice not watching Tottenham news on a weekend, but just waiting for the next weekend, and it's the big one. So I'm looking forward to it. A lot of high hopes. So yeah, see how we go.
Yeah, I must say, not having to listen, not having to watch, not having to see Spurs play has been very, very nice. It's been a positive experience. I'm sure you will all agree. Mr. Billy is joining us yet again. How are we doing, my man?
Yeah, very good, man. Starting to get the old North London derby nerves kicking in now, and yeah, I feel last night was a big one, wasn't it? I think for the game, and it suddenly made it an absolutely massive game for both teams. So yeah, that result last night has changed my feeling on the game a little bit. Don't think that makes it any easier. It might even make it harder, but it's now just massive for both teams.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I always, any football's on, I try to have it on. I always put Arsenal on if they're on, but as soon as they go a goal up, I turn it off. I'm like, I can't watch it anymore. So
same. That was a quick one last night. Turned off for about 5 minutes, isn't it? And then
yeah, and then we're sitting there, and all of a sudden get a little notification saying there's been a goal. I'm thinking, oh, hang on a minute, last few minutes, could it happen? And obviously there was a last minute goal, and that could, as Billy said, we will talk about it a little bit later on, but it could impact going into that game, because obviously it means that they've been on a bit of a run now. They've obviously dropped some points. All right, it's not defeats, but even dropping points just as in draws it can be quite crucial, especially at this sort of end to the season sort of thing. So we will be discussing with it in a little while, but Chris, just as an overall, it feels like there's been a hell of a lot happening in the 12 days or so since Spurs last played. Obviously, Frank's gone. There's been a new manager come in. Arsenal, obviously, that gap we thought was going to really extend because they had 2 games since we last played, and they only picked up the 2 points. But where do you sit with Spurs as a whole at this current stage? Obviously, you've got the relegation zone being spoken about. Ange has had 2 interviews come out in the last couple of weeks. Pochettino has also had an interview. Like, where do you just currently sit with everything as Spurs is at this moment in time?
Obviously, Frank going, I think it had to be done. I feel like that everyone sort of agrees that that's probably the best case for everyone. The new manager that's come in, although it is on an interim basis, which I think works best. I'm hopeful that we see something different and better, but it's always a tough one. I mean, if the players ain't going to get up for the game against Arsenal, then I don't know what game they're going to get up for, because this is the game where we really need to dig in and fight for everything. So it'd be good to see what he brings out of them and how much. I know he's had an interview already, and he sort of mentioned he knows it's a big game the weekend and he's prepared everything he can. So it'd be interesting to see that. And then there's all the other talk about backroom changes and board members leaving in the summer. And I don't know. I do just want to get to the end of the season now and just see what happened, where we are, and start again, basically, because it does just seem like it's just been a bit of a faff the last 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, completely agree. And as I say, there's so much that's been going on. We'll touch on it shortly, but you're talking about the stuff that's come out in regards to the board members meeting with the trust, removing some of the conversations and some of the questions. You've got all of the rumors that actually started breaking in the last few hours around sponsorship deals pulling out at Spurs because they're not happy with sort of communication. They're not happy with where the club look like they're going to. So a bit of a strange one, but hey, this is Tottenham Hotspur. This is what happens. Blaine, my man, you're so very lucky that you was able to be able to move that flight out. Although saying that, on Monday, we may be sitting there saying, I wish I'd have got that earlier flight and potentially missed the game. But let's see, my man. Thankfully, you managed to not get caught up there. Romero won't play. Romero is suspended for that, so he won't be playing. And big up Gary. I was only joking, my man. How we doing? Bill, where do you currently sit with everything? I mean, a lot of Tottenham fans have been going through the mire. I know we won the Europa League, but last year was very difficult. So many defeats and obviously so many injuries. We've had this year such highs in the Champions League in terms of getting straight through, but again, so many injuries, negative play. Obviously, there's been so much going on at this club. Where do you just currently sit with all of it at this moment in time?
Do you know what? So before the Newcastle game, I tweeted that, after this game, there are 12 days, 12 days left. It'd be a good time to get an interim. And that feels like so long ago now. Like those 12 days have just been, it feels like, 2 years has happened since that Newcastle game. But in that time, we've had a lot of space. Not loads of training and stuff like that because the players had 5 days off, which you might think, well, that's a bad thing because they need training. But at the same time, these players are probably all red zoning because there's only about 12 of them left at this point. So I think that would have done us good. And obviously, we've got a completely new manager in. And I think it's just the unknown at the moment, isn't it? Because we're not really too sure. He's done one interview, which is obviously a club interview. I'm looking forward to tomorrow to seeing the actual press conference because I think we'll learn a lot more about him then. So that'd be good. And I think we needed that space from the Newcastle game because, that was a time when I honestly, genuinely thought that if this continues, we're going down. Like we're actually that bad. We played so badly in that game and so many alarm bells and against a Newcastle team that aren't in particularly good form either. And I was worried. And then 12 days off, new manager, new ideas, and hopefully it just shows you the sort of the difference that, a couple of different factors can make. Arsenal dropping some points and suddenly you're going into a North London derby thinking we can get something. But yeah, it's been good to have that 12 days off because it's been so miserable, man. We've been on these shows together and it's just been a really diabolical season. But, at least now we have a new manager. And I think if we were going into this North London derby with Thomas Frank, the atmosphere would be nervous and tense. Now I think with a new manager, it should be quite electric on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And big up stateside footy. How are we doing, my man? How's it going, fellas? The dynamic duo of Luke and Billy T. We just seem to be on so many pods recently together. It's always a pleasure spending time with Billy. About to jump on the Big Bird, headed to London to watch Igor Tudor to do something Thomas Frank could only dream of doing, beating Arsenal. My man, good luck to you. We've obviously
I'll see you there I'll see you for a pint, my friend, Stephen.
Yeah, 100%. As you said, you're very, very excited to come over. Let's see after the game how exciting it is and whether it's been worth a trip. But what a game to come over to see. Hopefully, as you said, we can deliver a top performance. And I completely agree with Billy. I think that the negative feelings around having Thomas Frank here, I think going into this derby would have been very, very difficult. But hopefully there's a bit more of a buzz. Big up, my man. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, so obviously going on to Tudor and his first sort of conversations and first sort of anything that we've heard from him, he's speaking about effectively doing fans proud, similar to what we hear quite regular. So he said on the North London derby, we want to play this game in a way that our fans will like, going and giving everything that we have in the right way, brave, but in the same time intelligent and smart to achieve what we want, and that's the victory. And he has spoken in previous terms about wanting to win games 4-3 and not 1-0, which is very much a sort of going down again the theory of sort of Ange. He does feel in ways that he's kind of amalgamating Frank and Ange in terms of, from a defensive standpoint, he does like to sit quite low. However, he likes to go longer. He doesn't want to play intricate stuff. He wants to basically get the ball towards the opposition's goal and start attacking from there. But then also he's got the pressing and he wants to go and score goals as well. So it's a little bit of a mix here, which I think is obviously good to kind of get around and see. We've obviously seen about his record. When he first goes into clubs, he seems to turn things around pretty quickly. So, Chris, what are your kind of thoughts on him? And obviously, the next 5 games that we've got coming up, you've got Arsenal, Fulham, Palace, Liverpool, and Forest. Are you expecting him to come in and kind of hit the ground running? Are you expecting, I think it's after the Liverpool game, there's about 3 or 4 games where you kind of look at thinking, if we was in a good run, we might be able to really progress from here. Where are you kind of at with the whole Tudor announcement? What are you expecting to see? And obviously we'll go into a little bit more about the team in a little while.
I think it's a really interesting because he's not, I mean, his track record is fairly good, but he hasn't got an amazing record. It's always these interim jobs that he seems to have the good records at. So it's a bit of a, it's not a worry, but it is a bit of a, you sort of wonder, why is he like that? But then I suppose being a Spurs fan, we just want someone that comes in, shakes it all up, gets the players where they need to be, and gets us going again. So as I said, as long as the boys turn up on Sunday and have a good go at it and put up a fight for a performance, it's already an improvement in my eyes. And if we can walk away with points out of it, even all 3, it'd be really, really good. And then hopefully that will give them the confidence to go. And you sort of look at it the flip side and say, was we being held back? Was the tactics wrong with the previous manager? Was Frank just not getting the full potential out of these players? Because the players, I think, do need to hold some sort of trying to find the right word.
Accountability.
Probably, yeah. They need to take some of that because they've not been at their best. And I imagine, I think everyone knows that they have got better performances in them. So it's whether that's right and whether we see the better performance in them, or whether the manager was trying to do the best he had with the players that he had, and it just wasn't working out because the tactics weren't right and the players just ain't there to do it as well. So nothing but optimistic for Sunday's game. Tough one to come in for him as well. He won't be sitting there thinking, this is going to be a good first game. Probably a real test, and it's probably a good way to get the Tottenham fans back on board by a solid performance. As I say, hopefully 3 points.
Yeah. Imagine that. Blaine, big up, my man. So generous. Thank you very, very much. 10 gifted subs. Please make sure, guys, if you're the recipient of one of them, and Chris, you're actually one of them, please make sure you send a big thank you over to Blaine, a massive supporter. Thank you very much, my man. And yeah, I completely agree. Bill, where do you kind of sit with this? Obviously, we've been discussing on plenty of streams about who we think is going to come in, what are they going to do. Heitinga was the one that I thought that they'd go down. They've kind of changed it all up. Not only have they changed it up, they've brought in his own staff as well for what is an interim basis. Is there any likelihood of this becoming longer than what it is, even if it's relatively successful?
I don't think there's much likelihood. I think the only situation that could be in is if he either wins the Champions League, which obviously we know is extremely unlikely, or wins maybe like 9 to 12 games, 9 out of 12 games or more, and then we're playing really, really well, and we suddenly look really good in terms of visually as well. It's a slight possibility, but I think everyone is aware of the situation, and he said that himself in his interview. That basically, I think the objective is just make sure we don't go down, take the payday, give him a bonus, and then we'll job done. Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping us alive. So I think that's, it's very unlikely that he's here, but you never know. Funnier things have happened in football. Obviously, Di Matteo won the Champions League as an interim manager, so it's possible. But just when you look at the quality of teams and how bad we are, it's almost it's almost not worth talking about really. But you never know with this football club. Some weird things can happen. We were pretty bad in the Poch season when we got to the Champions League final, but obviously not this bad. But I think to stay around, he'd have to win at least 9 of the games, and also we'd have to look really good in the system as well.
Yeah, I completely agree, and obviously as a fan base, we seem to believe that all eyes lead to Poch. However, there's so many different facets that you can kind of take in and go, actually, that's not correct. It's not going to work out like that. We're going to go elsewhere, etc.
Yeah, but there's a Real Madrid job now as well, isn't there? I know there's that article that linked with him. I think was a rubbish source, but you never know. It's the kind of thing that would happen to us, isn't it? Where we're trying so hard to get Poch, and suddenly he says, actually, I'm going to Real Madrid."
Yeah, 100%. And also what you got to consider is there's so many managers that are going to be available. Like we could get to the end of the season, Slot could be leaving Liverpool, Xabi Alonso could be going in there, and then all of a sudden someone else who's potentially targeting Alonso because they don't think Liverpool are going to sack their manager, they then have to go for a second choice. So Pochettino might not be on anyone's radar.
And also, same thing. Like if maybe Slot turns it. Well, he's not doing too bad at the moment, is he? Slot turns it around and has a good end of the season, and he stays. And suddenly, there's no job available. Alonso's sitting there thinking, "Well, actually, there's no one who actually wants me." And then, Tottenham, I'll give him a call and actually thinking, maybe, well, am I going to get a better job this summer? Maybe not. So there's a lot to play. And obviously we've got things like Nagelsmann, and there'll always be twists and turns as well. You wouldn't be surprised if, for example, Guardiola wins the title, then quits, retires, and then suddenly the City job's available as well. And Alonso might, there's going to be so many twists and turns, especially with a World Cup year,
and especially with Tottenham Hotspur, because nothing's ever straightforward. So that definitely won't happen. Steve, we are going to come on to this in a little while, just about sort of the form of Arsenal and everything else. The one thing I did want to catch up on, I know Billy's already mentioned it, but Chris, it's a full week of training. It's something that Spurs have not had for quite a long time. Obviously, this is getting used to a new manager, a new system, and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is going to be a positive thing, that he's able to kind of get a little bit of a gap now, get his thoughts across? Obviously, Billy's right. There's so many players that we're still missing, obviously, which is difficult. But do you think that this is nice now that we've able to get? Because obviously Arsenal have had 2 games within those days. They've not been on a great run. Do you, sirs, or is it actually a little bit of a negative in terms of Arsenal are obviously in a bit of a challenging situation? How better than to turn it around against Tottenham? And obviously that could be the other way around for Spurs, right? Almost like what a kickstart this would be if Spurs was to go and beat Arsenal. Does it kickstart? Where do you kind of sit on that? Is it a positive, or do you think it's a possible negative because we've had a bit of time before we last played?
Yeah, I think time has helped us, especially when you have a new manager. Normally you don't get a full week of training. Normally it's only 2 or 3 days. So I think it really will. We should see a very good structure on Sunday with how he wants to play. I think it's a back 3 he tends to like to play. So it'll be good in terms of that. And he's got all week to get the players on board, to let them understand, to work with them, to get them where he wants them to be. And probably he can assess stuff. He can come in and assess the full squad as well, because there might be some players that come in and start that have not had much game time under Frank. So I think it's really good for everyone to sort of start fresh and prove what they can do. From the Arsenal side, I mean, they're getting a point against Wolves midweek is not what they would have wanted, especially when you're 2-0 up. But I don't know, maybe does the doubt creep in? Because I think it goes down to, is it 2 points if City win?
City play on Saturday night. Yeah, if they win, they go 2 points. It's actually, which is something I never thought I would hear this season, the way Arsenal were going. It's actually in City's hands now. If City go and win every game, City win the league. I know that's unlikely, but if City win their game in hand, they then play Arsenal. So if they win every game now, Man City will actually be champions.
So then if they drop points, they've got a game in hand and they play them at the Etihad as well, and it'll be 2 points. So Arsenal cannot afford to drop any more points.
Yeah, and obviously when you have that 7-point cushion, you're now talking 3 games. But now it's the 5-point cushion. It's now only 2 games where 2 losses, 2 wins. All of a sudden, that it's already wiped out. Whereas with a 7, it's that 3rd game that needs to kind of be involved.
2 games with a game in hand as well. So it's right back in it now.
And the amount of Arsenal fans that I'm talking to, and I say to them like about the league and stuff, and I think the doubt is creeping in because everyone said you can never rule out City. Unless it's mathematically impossible, you can never rule them out because you could go into the last game and be 3 points clear of them and 8 goal difference positive over them, and you'll lose the game but think, oh, it's fine. But City will go and win 9-0 because they're just that team that they can produce that, and you can never rule them out. So, I think there'll be a bit of. I think if they do go and win against Wolves, I think they'll probably come up to Spurs and they'll look at us and maybe think, oh, this might be a different beast now, new manager, different way of playing. It might not be what we were expecting. But it's going to be a good game, I think. I think we there's no excuse for us to come out and play any other way other than just go for it, because we need to just go for it. We need to go for it in every game now. We can't be playing games. We've not got a cushion that we had last season where we wasn't going to get relegated. This season, we could end up very quickly being dragged into quite a serious point watching table where every game matters, and we're constantly not just looking at our results but looking at the teams below us as well and seeing how they're getting on, and having that one look over your shoulder all the time is not how you want to be playing football, especially not towards the end of the season.
Yeah, 100%. It's obviously going to be very difficult, and you're right in terms of them dropping. Obviously, they were 2 up. It's the first time in Premier League history that the team that are top have blown a 2-goal lead against the team. I know that Wolves are bottom, but I think it's in the relegation zone, so it's not just the bottom place team; it's any team in the relegation zone, I believe. So, is it that time again where the pressure really starts mounting? And I've been saying for ages that I think that they need to have a huge lead like Liverpool did last year. But if anyone is close, then that's when the pressure really starts mounting. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can change in going into the rest of the season. Obviously, Arsenal are still in cup competitions. They're still in Champions League. If they're still in the latter stages of that, say City are not in that competition, that they then focus all on the league. So so many different bits and pieces that can be factored in before we get to these crucial last few weeks. But Bill, what do you think the minimum is for Tottenham in this game? Obviously, Arsenal are going to go into it favourites. Let's be clear; they're still top of the league and everything else. So Spurs are not going to go into it with too much in terms of the bookies expecting Spurs to get a result. Say, is it just to put up a decent performance? Is it to keep it respectable? Are we saying no? Actually, because of the dire situation we're in, we just need points, and he needs to pick up a minimum of a draw. What do you think the minimum requirements are for this game?
I think if we're being realistic, it'd be unfair to expect a result. It's great that we've got a bit of optimism back now, and maybe there's a chance that we might do something. But I think if you're realistically thinking, just because we've got a new manager and we're suddenly going to bridge a massive gap in the league, it's just not reality. So I think what we would just need to see is a bit of fight. I think the fans would appreciate that. If we could nick a draw, it'd be brilliant. And it's sad to be going into a North London derby thinking if we could nick a draw, it's brilliant. But it's just the reality of where we are. We're absolutely miles behind them at the moment, unfortunately. And the Wolves and Brentford game did show that if you do get up to them and give them a bit of fight, then you can get a result there for sure. But I just kind of think let's be realistic about our situation. We've not won a Premier League game in 2026. We've lost, what is it now, 6 or 7 consecutive games against Arsenal. We haven't scored a goal that wasn't. We haven't gone ahead against Arsenal since the Conte game. It's been an absolutely horrendous record against Arsenal recently. When we played in this season, it was one of our worst performances of all time. We barely laid a glove on them and got smashed. And Eze did the only thing he's ever done in an Arsenal shirt, and it was horrific. So to suddenly think, well, now Igor Tudor's come in, we can actually get a draw or a result here would be crazy. But I think what we can expect is hopefully to see some fight. And if we do that, you never know, because of the atmosphere and the way that football is at the moment, might happen. But I think Arsenal is twofold at the moment. Either they're going to be terrified because the bottle's creeping in, as it has been the last couple of games, or they're going to really look at this game to put things right again, set the record straight again. So we might feel the fact that Arteta's going into this game as a must-win, which probably doesn't help us that much. But if we can keep it 0-0 for 25 minutes, and then suddenly the doubt starts keeping in again, and maybe we can get a result. Who knows? But I think if you're looking at it from a realistic angle, then we can't really expect much in terms of result from this game.
Yeah, I agree. Who has more pressure on their shoulders? Arsenal, City is chasing and the wobble kings, or is it Spurs who desperately need points to stay clear of the drop? Chris, I'll come to you on that one. Does a lot actually matter in terms of the Manchester City Newcastle game, which is obviously played the day before? Because if City go and lose that game, for instance, all pressure sort of comes off of Arsenal in a way, but then the other part is the pressure's on for them to then extend that gap again. So the pressure's on for both sides, right? And in some aspects, if City were to lose, you could argue that the pressure's off a little bit of Arsenal, and it's off at Spurs because Spurs are playing Arsenal and Arsenal are the favourite. So you could argue both ways on this, right? What do you think? Who do you think has the most pressure going into this? Spurs being in that relegation battle, or Arsenal having to win to kind of progress on in their charge for a title?
I think the pressure would be on Arsenal because they've dropped points and the gap is lessened. So the fact that City play the night before, again, they're probably going to be sitting there watching that game thinking, and if City go 1-0 up or 2-0 up, you sort of then go, do you know what? They're just coming for us. And then with Spurs, I know the pressure's on us at the minute because we are in a relegation battle. But as you said, we're not expected to beat Arsenal. No one's sitting there saying, we're going to go out there. We should be turning up against these and beating them. Because we know what state we're in. We're not at, as Billy said, we're not at that level. So we shouldn't. I mean, you'd like to think that the emotion kicks in these sort of games, and that's where you get your results from as well, because they want it more. You want to beat these more, not just because we want the 3 points, but again, it's also taking points off them as well. So I think we've got 2 or 3 games on the Tudor to see how we're going to get on. And see the system and see how we go. And that for me is going to be the real key to then our Tottenham under pressure, because we could take a point against Arsenal and then we could end up going and beating Fulham and beating Palace. And it takes us for like West Ham to not pick up a few wins or whatever, maybe lose a couple and draw one. And that gap just opens up again. So it is all ifs and buts and maybes, but I think for the trouble with Spurs at the weekend is that no one knows how we're going to play. No one knows what we're going to get out of this team, because it's a new manager and it's a new way of doing things. So it should just be everyone sort of looking forward to it and not thinking, if we beat Arsenal, that's it, we're going to go and win all the next 11 games after that. We should just need to see our team play football and be fighting for points in every game. And that should be the bare minimum that we expect from our club.
Yeah, and ironically, that's a lot of that was what we thought we was going to get under Frank. Like we thought it was going to be structured. Players were going to work hard, etc. Bill, who do you think's got the most pressure going into this? As I say, is it relegation candidates or is it title chasers?
Probably relegation candidates, I would say. Just because Arsenal, I mean, I know you couldn't technically argue that if they don't do it this season, then are they ever going to do it? But they've been there or thereabouts the last 4 or 5 years now, and they always seem to recover. And next season, they'll be back next season. If we go down, we're done for the foreseeable. Like it'd be such a catastrophic, thing. And I think because of the Thomas Frank's gone and because the new manager's come in and we've had that 12 days off, you kind of forgotten about relegation a little bit. But if we lose this game as well, and let's say West Ham pick up a win, I think they got Sunderland, don't they? We're right in the mix. I mean, anyone who watched Nottingham Forest today, an absolutely unbelievable result. They've gone to Fenerbahce away and won 3-0. Changed their manager as well. So, we can't lose sight of the fact that we're still on a tightrope here. It feels a bit different now because we have a new manager. But if we look, if we lose it, say for example, we lose today and then lose to Fulham, we are in a real bad place. So, I do think the threat of relegation is worse just because Arsenal will recover from not winning the title. We will not recover from being relegated.
Yeah, sadly, I absolutely have to agree. Guys, just for anyone that's seen, there has been a slight change to the setup here. So just up here, there is a QR code for a Walk for Autism donation. So there's a charity event that takes place. It's basically over 8 days, and basically it's 100,000 steps over the course of 8 days that I'll be taking part in. I've done it over the last few years. Over $5,000 has been raised. So if you guys can very kindly please scan the QR code, and also I have put the link in here as well. If you've got anything that you can donate, that would be highly appreciated. We're nearly 50% to the £500 goal that I've set, so thank you very much. I have posted it all over the socials as well, so if you wanted to take a little look into why this means so much to me, then please do so. And obviously if you've got any questions, please give me a shout. Naughty Paperclip 100% completely agree. Xavi's attitude, and this isn't just from the post that he's put out on X today, but also from different conversations that we've heard as well. Xavi's apparently supposed to be someone in the dressing room that is exceptional with these young players. And obviously, let's not forget, this guy's been a wonder kid since the age of 12. He knows exactly what it's like being a young superstar coming through the academy. He knows what works and what doesn't, and everything else. So it's brilliant to see, and I feel like this can only benefit him, his integration into the club, and also the fans as well getting on side. So I think it works for everybody. Completely agree as well. In regards to City, I think it's going to be a big factor in regards to how Arsenal come into it and what they feel is required. And a few people have mentioned it, but the stadium needs to be absolutely rocking. And I think it will. I think it's gonna provide us with a bit of a platform, a bit of a benchmark now to kind of really get together in the last few weeks and months of the season to try and pull something that we haven't seen. To be honest, we've been poor for a period of time. And that was one thing that I wanted to speak to you, Billy, about in terms of the next 5 games. As I mentioned, we've got Arsenal, Fulham, Palace, Liverpool, Forest. Now, Palace and Forest are obviously in and around where we are as a club at this moment in time in terms of positions in the table. Obviously, Fulham's still a big game as well, and definitely one that over previous seasons we would say is a winnable one. But do you think that, I know that he's had the Arsenal game is very difficult, but he's had a full week of training. You'll have the Arsenal game, you'll have the Fulham game to really then get to grips with what he wants, what he needs to then go into Palace, Liverpool, Forest. And then, as I say, I believe after Forest, there's a couple more games that we would definitely look at as one of the ones that were winnable. Do you think this is the reason why they've made that decision specifically before the Arsenal game? Because a lot of people were saying, if you keep Frank, because even if we lose, that's what's expected, and the new manager doesn't start his reign with a loss. But do you think that it's key that he gets that training period, a few matches before the real games where you're against your rivals are actually coming up?
Yeah, because a lot of people have sort of said, been trying to do the maths, and probably that we need 3 or 4 wins to survive, 3 minimum, 4 maximum. So if you count those games out, you would hope that we'd be able to win at least one of them Forest or Palace games, and possibly Fulham, and then suddenly you only have to win 2-3 more games in the rest of the season to get out of there. So, it's a lot more doable. Whereas, if say they kept Frank for the Arsenal game because they knew we'd lose it anyway, suddenly you've got 5 days before Fulham, and you're in. We've now had 2-3 weeks of Igor Tudor by the time the Fulham game comes along. So I understand the reason. Obviously in hindsight, they should have done it a lot earlier. They should have done it when we had that run of winnable games in January, when we had Burnley and West Ham, and it was just mental that they kept Thomas Frank so long in the end. But yeah, I think in hindsight, this is what we have to do to survive. If we come out the end of that Forest game with no wins, I'd be really concerned about relegation. So we have to pick up a win in either the Palace at home, Forest at home, or Fulham away. And we've been pretty poor against Fulham away this season. Let's not forget they beat us quite comfortably this season as well, obviously with an absolute horror show. So that's not going to be easy either. But if we have to win one of those 5 games that you mentioned there, otherwise we are in big trouble.
Yeah, completely agree. Again, unfortunately, completely agree. It's difficult.
It's March next week, isn't it? Next week is March, and we haven't won a game in 2026 in the Premier League. It's mad, isn't it? Like, if we don't win tomorrow on Sunday, which no one is really expecting us to, that'll be March. Our next game will be in March, and then no Premier League wins until in March.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans kind of, and me included, completely dismissed the idea of relegation, not because we were very good, but just because there was other teams that had to go on runs of winning game after game, and they hadn't done it all year because that's why they're in sort of the relegation zone. But I think that West Ham result against Man United, that West Ham score against Man United where they took the lead and they had the lead until the very, very few minutes before the end, I think that was the real deciding factor in this club to go, actually, this is a lot closer than we should be in, but also than we probably thought, because West Ham could have had 2 more points now, and all of a sudden, again, we said about it being points and games, it goes from being 2 games to now 1 is the actual pivotal part. So very, very difficult. I definitely think that them taking the lead against Man United was a bit of a kick up the backside to the fan base and also to the ball to go, this is a lot closer than it should be. So, but guys, what do you think in terms of this Arsenal game? We are going to go straight to the predictions now, because towards the end of this show, we are going to be talking about things away from this specific game. So, Chris, we'll come to you. Let's just go, and we won't go through the team selection because there's still so many question marks over who could be playing and who might not be playing. But what do you expect to see
tomorrow, won't it, to see if he announces any? It looks like Richarlison trained, so it'd be interesting to see if he says anything tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. And it'll also be interesting how he goes around the injury front, because that's been a big conversation for obviously Ange and for Frank as well, in terms of, do they give much away? Frank obviously was basically, don't ask me a question about an injured player, you're not going to receive any answer. It'd be interesting to see how he kind of programs it, because the rumours so far recently have been Spence is obviously back, Richarlison should be back. There's also conversations about Bergvall actually being back within the next 6 weeks because he's had his boot removed. So there are players that seem to be coming back into it. I had a little look on Alistair Gold's predictions today, and actually he said that there's 5 different formations that he's looked at that Tudor could play, which obviously that means he could play any single formation with anyone playing. So it kind of didn't give you much of an insight whatsoever. But Chris, what do you expect to see, even if it's just formation wise? Do we think Xavi, for instance, is going to be a player that's going to come good under him? And what's going to be the score prediction, my man?
Formation-wise, I think it's hard for me to look past the 3 at the back. I don't think it'll be 2 strikers either, so it'd be like a 4-3-4-3 maybe. And then prediction, I'm going to go 2-2.
Gone with Desmond. As I say, the manager's already mentioned that he likes to see big scoring games, obviously more winning, but he's happy for it to be goal scoring. So that was my hopeful. I've always got 2 predictions in my head. Head and heart. I always go head, heart. Let's be realistic, and then go, but let's dream. And I try to find somewhere in the middle. So I actually agree. I was going to say 2-2 as well. So hope that's the case. Billy, are you on the optimistic side, or are you going to be more realistic?
I'm fuming with Chris, because I was going to say 2-2 as well. I can't say that now, so I'm going to be bold and say 3-3. How about that? It's going to be like a Martin Yole first, North London, Harry Redknapp first North London derby. They both had big North London derbies, didn't they? With mad scores on their first couple of games. But I think we had up to 5-4, wasn't it? So I'm going to go 3-3.
I would absolutely take. I mean, I've been screaming for more attractive football, but if someone offered me now a 0-0 until the 90th minute, and then we score a horrible, dirty own goal from a corner, that would absolutely be the cherry on top of the cake for me. And then you'd see the absolute meltdown. The memes have obviously been already spread around, and they're still top of the table at this moment in time. So, Bill, I am going to come to you now, because I did put in that we was going to have a little bit of a conversation regarding the incident that took place earlier on in the week. But there's no person better to speak about it, because you had the Supporters Trust on your channel. And if you haven't, please go over and smash a big subscribe over to the Whistle Blows. Brilliant channel with Billy and also Connor as well. For anyone that doesn't know, effectively what happened is the board met with the Supporters Trust, and there are there are several different questions that are put to the board, and obviously they then provide answers to it. And in the manuscript, and what they do is they document the kind of meeting. And what the club decided to do was leave out various questions that the supporters trust had put in. Some of the questions evolved around where the sort of ambition is at the club, obviously the fears of the fans in terms of relegation, and they were completely void and left off of the manuscript. As I say, it's a great episode. If you want to, please, the link's in the description. It's also in the chat as well. Go over to the Whistle Blows and check out that video. But Bill, just want to have a little bit of an overview really as to what the trust said and obviously what the club done in response to that catch up that they had.
Yeah, so just a couple of things basically what's important to note. So the context of it is that the supporters trusted a fan survey with quite a few thousand people going in. So we're not talking, a little internet survey. We're talking about a significant survey into the fans with multiple thousands of people answering it. Spurs fans, obviously. And you didn't have to be a trust member. It went out on Twitter to any fan website, to any fan. Anyone could have signed up. And what they essentially do, and they do it 4 times a year, I believe. And you rate the board out of 10 on how you're feeling versus certain aspects. Like it might be like future proof and success is one of them. There might be like how we're doing with academy players. It might be what's going on the pitch right now. And you give it a mark out of 10. Now, this time the survey was a record low. No surprises why. Like all the questions were like, and Connor said it at the time. When I first saw the survey, I think, oh, Jesus, these are low scores out of 5. And they're actually out of 10. Like all the scores are like 1 point something. So they basically show that fans are, in all 5 measures, are really, really frustrated. Basically, like 2 out of 10, I think, was the highest score on any metric, which is obviously terrible. So they take these to the board, and they present them to the board. I don't think you have to be stupid. I don't think you really need a survey to tell right now that Tottenham fans are frustrated. I think, but this is really stark and like inarguable evidence because they say, look, we've interviewed X amount of people. This is what they're feeling. What do you do about it? And they had that conversation with the board, and blah 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 goes on. Come back. And then obviously anyone who's been in that kind of official meeting at work or whatever, you get the minutes afterwards. When they got the minutes back, a lot of the stuff that was in the meeting has been omitted. So firstly, I just think that's absolutely nuts in the first place. The fact that, we've had, and bearing in mind that, the trusts have had these kind of meetings with, Daniel Levy and Donna Cullen, who get bad reps, in terms of communication. As far as I know, this kind of stunt has never happened even with them. So it's a bit of a red flag straight away. And so the trust then thought, well, we're going to post our agreement. Yeah, as Robbie says here, well, we're going to post our version. They posted their own version of the minutes. So, I mean, I don't know why the club would have thought, well, obviously the trust are going to do that anyway. So the minutes are going to be out there. It's just, it reminds me of it's like North Korea tactics, isn't it? And trying to sort of dedicate the media and sort of, change the media to suit your own narrative. It's really concerning because what it's essentially doing is not only is it a 2 fingers to the trust and what they're doing, it's a 2 fingers to the fans as well. Because the fans are the ones that answer these survey. And so if you look at the minutes on the trust website, anyone that wants to get a look at them, just go to the THST Trust website, and it's the first article there. All the concerns that they've admitted are just things like Tottenham fans are worried about relegation. Of course they are. Tottenham fans are worried that academy players don't have a pathway. Of course they are. Tottenham fans are worried about ticket prices. Tottenham fans are worried about, attendance in the stadium dropping. Tottenham fans are worried about the direction that the club is going. Tottenham fans are worried about who the director of football is. None of these things are a surprise to anyone. So the fact that they've admitted it is almost like they're saying, well, piss off, we don't really care, because it's really, really frustrating. And I think it's an embarrassment to, I'm not criticising the trust at all, because they're just, they're being put into a difficult position by the club. But for the club to take the piss out of fans like that, it's embarrassing. And it's a really interesting conversation with those guys. But I mean, I think the fact that we hired Benai to be this guy that's going to be a great communicator and really bridge the gap between fans and the board, and at Arsenal he did all these amazing things for communication and fans. Like, we've seen none of it, and now he's actively saying, I'm not even going to include this and this. So yeah, it's a real big alarm bells for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This is censorship. This is them stopping people from having a voice.
It's like North Korean censorship.
And as you said, these are not questions that there's a couple of fans asking. This is a general consensus of what most fans are concerned about. If you went and spoke to most fans, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on the street, wherever that may be, stadium, is the relegation a concern? Of course it is. 100% it absolutely is. And also the direction of this club, because the direction of this club at this moment in time, the trajectory is down, and it's not down a little bit, it's down massively. And that's a few months after winning the Europa League. We've been promised so much stuff in that the leaving letter, if you like, of Postecoglou and why they sacked him. Stated many reasons as to why they wanted they felt to go in a different direction, and they've failed to deliver on virtually everything. So the fact that they're now removing stuff like this, and as you said, Daniel Levy and others within that amongst that board have been criticised heavily, and a lot of it absolutely fairly. But they never, as you said, I've never known them to do anything like this. And it's so strange.
It is, and what Tom Kingham says there in the chat is really, really good. It's there's two reasons which they would do it: either they're hiding it or they don't agree with it. And to be honest, I don't know which one is worse, because there's no hiding from our current situation. But if they don't agree with the concerns, maybe they're essentially saying, well, we're wrong to be worried about relegation, or we're wrong to be worried about recruitment, we're wrong to be worried about the pathway for young players, and that's potentially even worse. So yeah, you're right. It could either be that they're either trying to hide it or they disagree with it all, and both of those options are terrible, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to necessarily agree for something. And as you said, this isn't like, oh, they've spoken to two fans. This is a consensus. This is anyone can write in with their own sort of thoughts and feelings. And also, let's just be clear, as you said, the whole correspondence with the club has always been pretty bad. It's always been, any publications that come out have always been pretty bad. Our communication has been poor as a club. This is one way in which that you can actually have communication with the club, and they decided to redact some of the questions. And then when people, and this is for fans as well, just to be clear, I've seen it all over X. I see it all over when podcasts have journalists on and things like that, where there's a lot of criticism to these journalists to say, why aren't you asking these questions? Why ain't you doing this? Why ain't you doing that? Well, the club have met with their own supporters' trust in a long-standing relationship. This isn't something where it's a one-off. This isn't something that's a nobody to them. This is a conversation that they have on a regular basis, as you mentioned. And they've decided that they're going to censor out some of that communication. So when there's meetings, when there's interviews that take place, when there's things that are broadcasted all over Sky Sports, this just gives you a slight indication into how much that's managed and how much that's redacted and how much that's looked at and micromanaged and everything else. Because this is exactly what goes on. There's so many fans that say you should be saying this, we should be asking these questions. The club simply won't take these questions because they've been asked them in a forum. And as you said, Bill, they knew that this was going to come out. They must have known that this was coming out.
And can I read you a couple of things that they've not included? So they've not included, fans are concerned at the current position at the direction of the club, which is no shock, is it? The team is not winning and change is not visible. Having watched for just 4 home league wins in a year, this anxiety and pessimism is not surprising. They've got rid of that. The belief generated by the Europa League has now been lost. They've got rid of that. Fans are concerned at a perceived lack of ambition in results, performance and failure to strengthen the team. They've got rid of that. They've also got rid of that. Young players are not coming through from the academy to the first team. They've got rid of that. Players on loan repeatedly. They've got rid of that. They said THS team says fans want to see authenticity, to stick to Spurs' DNA and a style of play. They've got rid of that. So, I mean, none of these things are surprising things. I mean, these are all the things that we've been talking about all year on the show and all year on it, across as a fan base. And
it's the fundamentals as to what's wrong with the club, and they've blatantly left it out. Like, it's not just the odd, oh yeah, we can get away with that. It's literally, as you say, everything that we've been talking about for so many years now, from top to bottom. We've been saying that the club just needs to be sorted out. So to blatantly leave it out of minutes is just, again, it's just neglect. It's just you can't run a club like that. It's shocking.
And this is the worrying thing, Tom. This is the problem. Again, these are not questions where people are going into the minute detail of stuff. Like, they're not questioning why there's certain transactions in the accounting system or anything like that. These are very generic, basic questions that most, even not just Tottenham fans, these are, if you went and spoke to any Premier League teams and said, what do you think the fans would be most concerned at Spurs? Relegation, the identity of the club, where they seem to be heading. These are all questions that we absolutely have every right to kind of ask. And again, it just goes back to how poor it is, how they think that they can get away with this. But the most concerning part about this is that if you're not on social medias, if you're not someone who's on X, if you're not someone who's on YouTube, there are probably fans, and I'm not gonna try and put a percentage on it, but there are definitely fans that are going to turn up in that stadium on Sunday and next Sunday and the following weekend, And they have no idea that this has taken place. They have no idea that the club have decided to do this. And that's what's really difficult when it comes to things like protests, because there's some fans that don't, it's not that necessarily they don't know about it in terms of they don't want to, it's just that it might not get to them. They might not live on social media. They might not see it. They might not be that bothered, whatever. But this absolutely should not be happening at any football club, let alone a Premier League club. Like this is crazy for me. And you're right. None of the points are that controversial. They're not that difficult to really answer, other than someone has to take some accountability to say, yeah, we've got things wrong. And accountability at this club doesn't seem to be something that happens. Steve has mentioned it as well. Let's just have a go back up. Where was it? Long-standing tenured sponsorship pulling out at the end of the season, citing 17th place. And ironically, Bill, a lot of what the fans questioned, a lot of what the fans said, and that was redacted, are the rumours coming out now why sponsorships are deciding to pull the plug, whether they're cutting early or whether they're not extending deals. I mean, again, this isn't groundbreaking news. A team that's finished 17th and then battling against relegation the following year is not going to get as high a sponsorship as teams in the Champions League. This is not, it's not groundbreaking stuff, but they've mentioned about ambition. They've mentioned about lack of understanding. And also, which I think was quite key, was the lack of communication that has actually come following Levy's resignation or leaving or sacking or whatever you want to do it. So actually, they're more justified. This justifies even more why those questions were asked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think this kind of news is not really surprising, because if you imagine sort of how it went, when you got these sponsorship deals in place in the first place, it was probably like, right, if you sponsor us now, we've got a new stadium. We're going to get back in the Champions League. We're going to stay in the Champions League 5, 6. Tottenham are going to be a serious team in the Champions League. We're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to win the Premier League title in the next 5 years. We're going to be in the Champions League. We're going to do this and this. In reality, what's actually happened since we've been in that stadium is we've pretty much declined year on year to the point of almost being relegated. So sponsors, rightly have not held up our end of the deal. And sponsorship, really, I imagine at the top level, is all about the Champions League or at minimum Europe. And Tottenham are now, we didn't finish in a European place last year, but we got in through, winning the Europa League. But we finished 17th. This year, we're very unlikely to be in Europe. So now they're thinking, well, hold on, I'm paying you the rate of a team that's supposed to be in Europe or supposed to be in the Champions League. And now, you're finishing below Bournemouth and Fulham and that lot every single year. Why am I not playing the sponsorship rate of that kind of team? So you can understand that. But I've always thought that, I think the club have made it quite clear they don't really give two shits about fan sentiment and what the fans think, because that's the way they've behaved, even from that little thing from the trust. But it's, even before then, they don't really care about the fans that much. But I think maybe this is a way that you can actually hurt them. This is actually something that will probably actually make them think, I'm going to go, actually, well, if we're losing sponsors now, this is serious. So maybe this is what we need for them to actually realise, either we need to put some serious money into this, or let's sell. We're going to sell. If we don't sell now, the value is going to keep going down and down and down. So maybe this might be exactly what we need in some ways.
Yeah, I think, Richard, you're absolutely bang on. You start redacting these very small things that are relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, because it's only questions and it's only answers, right? There's nothing to say that they are going to be held account to do this, because they're going to be held account to do it regardless, whether they say they're ambitious and they're not, or whether they don't prove that they're ambitious. It doesn't make any difference. They're still going to be held to account anyway, as much as we physically can. But this was one of the questions that I had, Chris, in terms of, is this the first time where we're starting to see maybe the overall value of the club now not continuing to increase? Like at this moment in time, if we start losing sponsorships, if we're not getting European money, because obviously we're nowhere near Europe at this moment in time, are we now starting to see actually the club are going to make less money than they did the previous year? Now we've moved into the new stadium. This is the only way directly that it's actually hitting the directors, because they're starting to realise the club's maybe not worth the value. That it's not valued. Sorry, it's not worth what we think it was because of all of these issues. Is it their mishandling of the way that they've not put together a better strategy, spend money wisely, that sort of thing? Are they now starting to see the repercussions of that?
Definitely. But all that will happen, I think, from that will be money out of the war chest, as such as it's called. Well, then we'll start to drop that, and it'll be a case of, well, we can't compete because we ain't earning the money, and But then fans will remember that when you was earning the money, you still wasn't going in, and maybe you was spending the money, but you're just not spending it correctly. The owners clearly are not interested in a football team. They're interested in a business. So they want to run the club like a business, which part of it needs to be run like a business to make sure that we are sustainable and we do keep progressing and we do keep building. But at the same time, we also need people in there that are football heads that have been in the game and can actually progress. Because if you don't progress on the pitch, you can build this business up. But as we're seeing now, you build this big stadium and everyone gets all excited about it. But if the team starts to decline, the business that you're trying to build is just going to keep falling and falling and falling. And to what point does it stop?
I think it's exactly it. At this moment in time, it's a slippery slope. Once you start decreasing and getting worse and worse and worse, you have to make some real change and some real shift in mentality to be able to stop that. And I think we've never had that mentality. We've never had the mentality to be the very, very best or compete right at the very top. I think we've stumbled across teams, players, maybe even managers that have been able to kind of bridge the gap. But actually, when you look at it over a consistency, we've never really been that team to kind of go, they're really going to go and do something here. Like, it just doesn't strike me as that sort of club. And I see it banded around quite a lot last year because of the amount of issues that we had in terms of the losses and everything else. But I think it's such an effective way about talking about Spurs, and that is acting like a serious club. Acting like a serious club and actually going out there and making the relevant changes. Now, that can happen in a multitude of ways. Signing top players, keeping your best players, getting rid of a manager if you don't think they're good enough and being being ruthless with that. But we haven't even done that. We didn't even do that. We took so long to decide that Frank wasn't the guy that it was just absolutely, absolutely crazy. So a real strange one. I'm struggling to see the light at the end of the tunnel at this moment in time, to be honest with you. But I do think that there is a bit more optimism that I thought if Frank was in charge, I thought we'd be relegated, to be honest. I just couldn't see where a win was coming.
As a wise man once said, every time I think I see light at the end of the tunnel, it turns out it's an oncoming train. Mr.
Yes, 100%.
Mr.
Oh,
Mr. said that last year, didn't he?
Yeah, Mr. Postecoglou did indeed say that. Now, I know that Chris was not a massive fan of Postecoglou, but he did come out with another interview today that was released. Chris, have you seen anything of it?
I started watching it earlier, just during the day, had it on in the background, but didn't realise that the most part of it was him talking about his actual life and his upbringing, and then the Forest and Spurs. The Spurs bit was right at the end, so I've just got onto the Spurs bit. I've not managed to catch that yet. But he seems like he's he's a straight talker. I mean, he said when he said it was his fault, he shouldn't have took the Forest job. Everyone around him was telling him not to take it. It's not for you. But he was like, I'm sitting there bored, thinking I can change this with the players that they've got. I think I can do something. So I think he's I think he is who he is. I don't think you get away from that. I don't think he tries to be someone he's not. But I do feel like with these interviews, I don't feel like you always get the full picture. I feel like you only get the side that he wants you to know about from him. Yeah. He won't say the ins and outs of everything. So I take it all with a pinch of salt, and I do try to not just take it at face value and go, well, that's all definitely true, because otherwise you've
got to read between the lines 100%, because he will have his own agenda, because he will want to make sure that he can get another job or something like that. I've seen it where I've seen some of the fan base talk about, I think it was it Paul Mitchell who came out and gave an interview about how he was being held back in the transfer market, and that it was all difficult and that everything was a problem. And then you sit there and you're like, but actually, you're not going to turn around and go, yeah, you got every player that you wanted, because some of them didn't work out. So everyone's got their own agenda in football. So you can't just listen to everything that's said. But what I did find interesting was that when that first snippet came out from couple of weeks back, a lot of fans didn't realize that actually that wasn't the interview. That was just because Frank had just been sacked. So they brought him into the studio. And I see so many fans jumping on he didn't take responsibility for anything. He didn't blame himself for nothing. Well, actually, as soon as you listen to the interview, you went, yeah, the Forest job, that's all on me. So it kind of like, it just made me laugh that our fans, I've never known a fan base to be so obsessed with not winning trophies than someone delivering a trophy and then being made out to be like the worst thing ever. I just find it absolutely baffling. Bill, I know you've got a similar sort of sentiment to Ange, whether you think he's the right guy now or whatever. The hatred for him in this fan base just really confuses me.
Yeah, and I think one thing that this one did do is sort of, gives the other side to that thing where, well, we only won the Europa League because of the players. Had a meeting with him. He actually said, well, I looked, I know obviously you have to, exactly what Chris is, right? Like, anyone who does these kind of interviews is doing it for themselves. It's not, it's not the
100%.
And that's not just Ange. That's anyone who goes on the overlap is going on because they want to get, they want to make themselves look good. That's why those kind of shows exist. So he's not alone in that. But he said, well, actually, I analysed the last 4 or 5 Europa League winners and I looked at how they played and we did have to change things, and he admitted it. So I think that sort of adds a bit more depth to that side of the story. I find it really I'll be honest, I find it really difficult to watch these Ange interviews just because for me, I think what we gave up with season 3 of Ange and what we got is still painful for me, to be honest. I think whether you want to, I'm not saying I want Ange to come back or anything like that, but the fact we gave it up for such a horrendous season just makes me look back and think, what on earth are we doing? Because even though, there's so much to talk about Ange in there, but I just think when we sacked Ange after the Europa League final, we were promised something better. And that's the only reason why you'd sack him. And what we got was even worse. And it's still a bit painful for me, to be honest, to even watch it. So I think, I think long term, it probably wouldn't have worked out, but it definitely would have been better than what we've seen under Thomas Frank. So, I find it really, tough to look back on still, because obviously I'm a massive fan of Ange, no doubt about it. But it's really hard. But the thing I find it most painful with Ange is everything he says is is my sort of philosophy in football. Everything that he says is what I want to believe in. I think sometimes with Ange, I will admit the idea is better than the reality of it. Like, I would love to be this attacking team that don't care about set pieces and all that. You just go and score loads of goals. Obviously, in reality, that never really happened. But the idea of Ange is exactly what I want my football team to be. So I find these interviews a bit painful sometimes, because I sit there listening to what we've just had to listen to a year of Thomas Frank press conferences, and now we're going back to that again. I can't do it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see him next, just because Thomas Frank has damaged me, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and you're right. The one thing that I really wish that they would have asked him was just about the whole where he goes to a new club and doesn't take any staff members with him. I feel like that's a real negative on his part. And I think that would have opened up a real good introduction into like his learning sort of thing. If he goes somewhere else, really, that should be something that you look to do. I like the whole throwing conversation was fantastic. You could just tell he absolutely hated long throw-ins with an absolute passion. But I agree. He typifies a lot.
I think the reason why he said it, the Forest job was all his fault, because he can't exactly blame Marinakis, can he? Otherwise he'll be getting a knock on the door.
No, exactly. And as you said, listen, it's not for me, and I said this towards the end of the season, I didn't think he would be sacked because he delivered that trophy. However, if you sack him, I understand why. If you bring in a level above him, if you're bringing in a top manager, and I kept saying I don't think Frank is in that remit, and I don't think Frank is a level above him at all.
And look what happened.
And I was crucified on YouTube on numerous occasions. Guys, we are going to wrap it up there. It has been we have been going just over an hour. But yeah, it's obviously a massive game. The boys have all guaranteed a 2-2 draw, which is superb. Bill went 3-3 in the end, but we're guaranteeing goals, and we're going to be unbeaten as well. Which what more can you ask for? As I said, guys, great video that Billy and Connor done. Please go over to their channel. Billy's X is below, and also the Whistleblowers as well YouTube channel. You've obviously got Chris's X, which is consistently in here, and I've probably put his X account in here more than he's actually been on his own X account, but we're gonna keep putting it in there. And yeah, I really hope that we can deliver some sort of performance, and this can be a bit of a turning point for this season, because I just feel like we us Spurs fans, I know that we had that trophy win, but we just deserve a lot more than we're currently seeing right now.
Yeah.
And you'll be on I'm a Celebrity, sat me out of here.
If we can be the ones to really derail the title chase as well, that'd be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
Just imagine how that would feel. Like if we can go there and somehow, even if it's only a draw or something like that, it would just be so good if we're able to stop them. And we've got a 3-1 win. There we go. Cheers, Rob. Big up, my man. Thank you very much, guys. As I said, if you haven't already, please make sure you go over and subscribe to Billy. I have no doubt that you're following on X already anyway. But yeah, we're guaranteeing a score draw here. We're guaranteeing a score draw.
And we'll be proud of our score predictions.
As I say, I'm hoping that it's a horrendous last minute nicker, which is disgusting and they hate it. That would be my absolute favorite. And then we can cue the meltdowns next week. Guys, thank you all for coming through as always. It's such a pleasure to come on and talk Tottenham. It's very difficult at times, but it is a pleasure to do it. So thank you very much. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to Billy. And also thank you to Blaine as well, dropping 10 memberships as always. So thankful. Guys, big up to you. Safe journey to you. And as always, come on, you Spurs.